Mr. President, it's Thursday, and I normally come down on the Senate floor to give the Alaskan of the Week speech, and unfortunately, I'm not going to do that today. Actually, last week, I named 2 Alaskans of the Week, so we kind of had 2 for 1 last week, and just as a little wrap-up for that, it was quite a remarkable thing that took place just last week in Alaska on Memorial Day. My 2 Alaskans of the week, a 91-year-old, actually 92-year-old artist, working with a detective, both Alaska natives, both from the community of Unalaska out on the Aleutian Island chain, worked together. Actually, Gertrude Svarney worked for decades to right a wrong and get a military burial on Memorial Day for a young man, and also an Alaska native from Unalaska, who died fighting in World War II and was never recognized. No gravestone, no tombstone, nothing for decades. And we had an amazing ceremony thanks to these 2 amazing Alaskans, Gertrude Svarney, as I mentioned, Mike Livingston, and the memory of this young Alaska Native soldier, Private George Fox, was now finally recognized. That was in a Memorial Day ceremony last week. I was trying to get there. Unfortunately, sometimes get a lot of bad weather out there. I flew halfway out to the Aleutian Islands, and we had horrible weather. We couldn't land, but the ceremony happened. So those were 2 Alaskans of the week 2 weeks ago that I just want to highlight again. Incredible work, such a moving ceremony. So I figured that was 2 for 1. So unfortunately, I'm not going to do an Alaskan of the week today. I know we always like to end the week on a high note. I'm going to talk about a mystery, Mr. President, that has really been certainly flummoxing me, and I think so many people in our federal government, on a matter that especially impacts millions and millions of Americans suffering from high energy prices. It's a mystery for the American people, and our federal government can sometimes be so opaque that you often don't know who's up to what in this big government of ours, particularly when people are trying to do things that are so obviously harmful to the American people. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this mystery, because I think we finally solved it. There's a culprit who's usually the culprit in a lot of bad things happening in our federal government, and I'm going to talk about that. So here's a little bit of background on the mystery. We passed a bipartisan infrastructure bill in November. Now, I voted for it. Some of my colleagues didn't. I voted for it primarily because I come from a resource-rich, infrastructure-poor state. Alaska has resources, oil, gas, minerals, renewables, that can help our state, can help the country, really help the world, but we have very little infrastructure. Think about this, Mr. President. My state is 120 times bigger than Connecticut, and we have less road miles in Connecticut. And I know we have less road miles in Maryland. So we need infrastructure. So Senator Murkowski, Congressman Young, and I, we all participated, certainly in our own ways, on getting this infrastructure bill written and then over the goal line in terms of votes. So overall, I thought it was a positive bill. It wasn't perfect, but especially the focus on roads and bridges and ports and harbors and broadband. And there's actually a provision in there for federal loan guarantees on a huge Alaska gas project, LNG project. And so, in my view, this bill was a win-win-win. Jobs, infrastructure, energy infrastructure to help bring down energy prices. And of course, the environment. Mr. President, I like to show this chart a lot. It's gotten a lot of attention. Some of our national media folks have seen it and they're like, geez, that can't be true. Let's PolitiFact or Fact Check Senator Sullivan's emissions chart. So they have. They've come back saying, hey, gosh, he's actually right. So it shows annual emissions from the major economies in the world since 2005 to present. Who's the leader in reducing emissions? Who's the leader? We are. America is. Actually, by far. It's not even close. Almost 15% emission reductions since 2005. Who's the main culprit of spewing emissions out in the global atmosphere? Well, you guessed it, our good friends, the Chinese communists. China, India, Iran, Russia. So we're the leader on this. I had the opportunity during a confirmation hearing recently for one of the Biden administration's EPA nominees, in charge of air quality, showed him this chart. Didn't seem to know a lot about the chart, but he seems like a good guy. And I said, hey, why do you think this happened? He kind of trotted out initially EPA regs. Wrong answer. This is because of the revolution in the production of American gas. That's a fact. Okay, you can check it all you want. So you would think that infrastructure, part of the infrastructure bill, that can help us actually produce more energy, with more energy infrastructure, that everybody would be for it. Helps the environment, global emissions, certainly helps workers, and helps build out infrastructure, which we sorely need. As I mentioned, Mr. President, big supporters of the infrastructure bill were all the trade unions in Alaska and America, because they know they're going to get the jobs from the build-out of this infrastructure bill. Now, one of the things the bill had that I thought was actually really important, and something I worked on in the Environment and Public Works Committee, was provisions to streamline our federal permitting system to be able to get infrastructure projects deployed and built. So that was a big element of this bill. Not as much as I wanted, but certainly a good start. And this has been an issue I've been working on since my time here in the Senate. It's a bipartisan issue, Mr. President, as you know. When you talk to mayors and governors in America, anywhere, doesn't matter what party they are, they want the ability to have the federal government permit infrastructure projects so we can move them out. That's not controversial. And here's the thing, as a country, we used to be really good at building stuff. Building stuff on time, building stuff that's impressive. Just give you a few examples. I think a lot of people know this, but our country used to be the envy of the world, building great projects responsibly, efficiently, on time. Pentagon was built in 16 months. Empire State Building was built in 1 year, 45 days. The 1,500-mile Alaska-Canadian highway, what we call the Alcan Highway, connecting lower 48 all the way through Canada up into Alaska, 1,500 miles. It took 8 months to do that. So we know how to do this as a country. Fast forward to today, Mr. President, Madam President, a new U.S. highway construction project to build a highway usually takes 9 to 19 years. That's according to the GAO. Let me just give you a couple examples of those. The Gross Reservoir in Colorado, that's going to offer clean water to the people of Colorado, has taken 2 decades of planning and permitting to expand the Gross Reservoir northwest of Denver. 2 decades, 20 years to get this important project in Colorado permitted. The California Bullet Train project was approved in the late 1990s, still not built. Its costs, because of permitting delays, have gone from $33 billion to $105 billion. The Mountain Valley Pipeline in Virginia and West Virginia began in 2015 to bring natural gas. Only 20 miles left to complete. It might not ever be completed because of permitting delays. And federal courts delaying energy projects. The Kensington mine in Alaska that now employs over 400 people is a gold mine. Average wage, by the way, over $100,000 average wage. Took 20 years to permit, if you include the litigation. The list goes on and on and on. When NEPA was originally passed, an EIS, Environmental Impact Statement, was to take less than a year, usually took less than a year, was usually a couple hundred pages. Now, Madam President, an average EIS takes 4 to 6 years to complete on any project in America and usually costs several millions of dollars. We are killing ourselves as a country in our ability to build or not build infrastructure projects. So, what did we do in the infrastructure bill? Bipartisan. We worked together to put together some pretty good permitting reform provisions. They're not nearly as good as I would want them, Madam President, but they were pretty good to get the infrastructure that's in this bill, roads, bridges, ports, yes, energy projects, pipelines for oil and gas, which we need, built quickly, or at least in a reasonable amount of time, not 20 years. So here's the mystery. That all happened. The president said he liked it. The unions really liked it. The building trades, the men and women who build stuff in this country. I've worked with Terry Sullivan, the great leader of the laborers, on permitting reform, this very issue. So we got some good things in there. So what's the mystery? Here's the mystery. After all this work, and the president touting the infrastructure bill, and we're getting ready to build, and it having good impacts in terms of natural gas on not just our environment and emissions, but continuing to make us the global leader, the White House set out new rules under NEPA for infrastructure projects in April. What did they do? They made the NEPA rules much harder to actually build infrastructure. Not just oil and gas, but it targeted oil and gas. All infrastructure, roads, bridges, ports, renewable projects, LNG projects, natural gas projects. The White House put out new NEPA rules, rescinding the Trump administration's rules, which were quite good and similar to some of the reforms we got in the infrastructure bill. And everybody knows that these White House rules are going to delay infrastructure projects. Why in the heck would we do that as a country? We just passed a big infrastructure bill with permitting reform in it. And somebody over at the White House said, no, let's make it harder. Madam President, here's an editorial from the Wall Street Journal that talks about the infrastructure NEPA regs, and it's called How to Kill American Infrastructure on the Sly. The White House revises NEPA rules that will scuttle the ability to build new roads, bridges, and oil and gas pipelines. I'd like to submit this for the record.
Without objection.
So, the new rules come out. They're clearly meant to kill infrastructure, especially oil and gas, but kind of everything. The president's touting this infrastructure bill as one of his big achievements. It was bipartisan. A number of us, myself included, voted for it. But there's somebody out there trying to make sure the infrastructure doesn't get built. That's the mystery. That's the mystery. Who would do that? Well, heck, I'm trying to find the answer because I really care about this issue, permitting reform, to get infrastructure projects built. My state's been ground zero about projects being delayed. So who is it? So I'm starting to ask around. The White House. Secretary Granholm was testifying in front of the Armed Services Committee 2 weeks ago. I raised this issue with her. Madam Secretary, who the heck's doing this? Are you? Senator, I didn't even know anything about this CEQ rule. A little surprising. I mean, there's a lot about energy, but that's what she said in the hearing. Go take a look at it. I believe her. I don't think she was pushing to delay infrastructure. Would it be the Secretary of Labor, Marty Walsh? He's a labor, former labor, LIUNA guy, right? I supported Marty Walsh strongly because I talked to him before his confirmation about, hey, look, there's a group in the White House that hates energy, even though it's great jobs, and there's some in the White House who think that they want to help the building trades build stuff. If you're with that group, Marty Walsh, I'll support you as Secretary of Labor. He said he was. So I don't think it's him. As a matter of fact, when these regs came out, the Laborers International put out a statement saying once again, quote, communities in need of vital infrastructure and hard-working men and women who build America will be waiting as project details are subjected to onerous reviews by these new rules. This is the Laborers International. The men and women who build stuff are not happy about this new NEPA rule. Americans will continue to bear the expense of NEPA-related delays, which cost taxpayers millions of dollars annually. Lengthy review processes and unpredictable legal challenges will result from these new NEPA regs. They will have a chilling impact on private investment in infrastructure. And of course, when we need energy, these new NEPA rules will make it harder for Americans to get energy. And the price of energy is going to continue to go like this, on the backs of working families. So, was it the Secretary of Labor pushing this? I doubt it. I doubt it. So who was it, Madam President? Well, as I've said on the floor of the U.S. Senate many times before, if there's something bad happening to the national interests of our country, either domestically or internationally, it's probably not far-fetched to assume John Kerry is near it. There is nobody in the Biden administration who so regularly tries to undermine America's national interests than John Kerry, kowtowing to the Chinese Communist Party, kissing up to Iranian terrorists. When Putin began his barbaric invasion of Ukraine, John Kerry publicly voiced his first concerns not about people dying, not about a democracy being overrun by a dictator. It was how Vladimir Putin might take his eye off his climate change goals. Madam President, this is embarrassing. As Americans, he's a senior official. Now, he has no power in terms of being confirmed by the Senate. Yeah, he's a former Secretary of State and a former senator. But on these issues, he is so out of touch with the average American. So, who was pushing these new NEPA rules to delay energy projects for America? The big mystery. Heck, I don't even think it was the president. He seems proud of this infrastructure bill. He's told all the unions he wants them to get to work and build, but now we have a new rule that's going to delay the building of infrastructure. Madam President, the mystery is solved. The mystery is solved. This is a headline from a Time magazine news story. Just came out yesterday. John Kerry saying, quote, "We have to push back hard on efforts to build new energy infrastructure in response to rising gas prices. We have to push back hard. You can't make this stuff up. This is the guy. This is the guy. So we have a new bunch of federal rules right now, driven by this guy and probably Gina McCarthy, who want to drive up energy prices, make it harder for infrastructure to be built, which is exactly what this will do. Nobody's even arguing against that. Drive up energy prices on the backs of working class Americans. And now he's out publicly saying, we got to do it. Stop infrastructure. You have this new revisionism, suggesting we have to be producing more energy. Well, yes, we do. It's amazing. You never know whose side this guy's on, but he's not on America's side. I will tell you that. So, Madam President, this is a new regulation, a NEPA reg. We have the authority here in Congress to use what's called a Congressional Review Act, a CRA. We have the power, when a new reg comes out, to say, no, we don't like that. In the Senate, we're going to have a vote, a Congressional Review Act vote, on whether to rescind an amendment, clearly driven by this guy, a regulation by this guy, that will delay energy projects, that will delay renewable projects, that will make sure Americans continue to pay record high energy prices. So we're going to have a vote on that. I plan on bringing that resolution to the floor soon. It's a privileged resolution, so we'll get a vote whether Majority Leader Schumer wants to vote on it or not. I'm assuming the president would like my CRA because he can't want delays to his infrastructure bill. He can't want delays to getting energy relief for American families. This guy does, right? So we're going to have a little test, and we'll have another mystery solved here on the Senate floor. 2 weeks ago in the Commerce Committee, I had a little debate with a couple of my colleagues, friends of mine, but I made a statement, which I think is very true. It's certainly true in my state. And it's this: at the national level, my Democratic colleagues, when they have a choice between supporting guys like this and his radical environmental allies and the working men and women of America who want to build stuff, they always choose him and his allies. My colleagues, some of them got really upset. How can you say that, Dan? That's not true. Well, it's true in Alaska. I see it every day. So my CRA is going to just ask a simple question. Who are you for? Who you stand with? American working families, the laborers, the people who build infrastructure that we need, the families suffering from high energy costs, or this guy and his radical environmental ally, special interests who have a lot of power in this White House, who are clearly behind this reg that I'm trying to rescind to make it harder to build infrastructure, especially American energy infrastructure. For my colleagues who say, no, we're with the working men and women of America, we'll see. We'll see. I hope you vote with me to rescind this reg that's only harming our country, only harming working families, only harming working Americans, and promotes the radical, out-of-touch agenda of John Kerry, Gina McCarthy, and the far-left woke environmental interests that they answer to. It's going to be an interesting vote, Madam President, and the American people are going to be watching. I yield the floor.